the concept of punishment for blasphemy clearly violates both the free speech clause of the Constitution and the free exercise clause of the Constitution. And there, to my knowledge, hasn't been a successful prosecution for blasphemy in this country in close to a century. In the Charlie Hebdo situation, the issue that would arise today would be less one about blasphemy and more one about whether the speech created a danger of a violent response. And their First Amendment jurisprudence in the United States has evolved over the course of the past century and has become much more speech protective over time.
It's an important difference between French and the US and on this topic and the question of limitation. The first difference is in terms of legal protection, because of course we do not have a similar First Amendment. The freedom of speech is protected by different statutes and very important statutes in France. Of course, there are also very important decisions from the French Conseil constitutionnel, so the French Constitutional Court. Also the case law of the European Court of Human Rights. But I would say from a general point of view, the statute of freedom of speech and the scope, the very wide scope of the freedom of speech is very different in France compared to the US.
Under the ICCPR, Article 19, which is essentially the international standard for protection of freedom of expression, it is less speech protective than the First Amendment. And it makes space for concepts like incitement to hatred and incitement to discrimination as cognizable grounds for limitations on freedom of expression, which are criteria that we don't recognize here in the United States. So it's really in this area of incitement that the differences between a kind of global approach and the approach that is in use in Europe and the US approach are most striking, where we have this very high standard that Jeff has outlined, where it's very, it's very hard to meet, and it has to be imminent and likely to result in violence. Whereas in Europe, if it's incitement to discrimination, an anti-Semitic or racist cartoon, that is judged as having a propensity to lead toward, stoking bigoted attitudes, that can be banned there. And, from a US perspective, I think what's sort of troubling about that is just, it seems very elastic. It seems sort of enormously elastic.
And as a journalist, I feel very much protected by the laws which exist in France, which put borders on what we can do. The call to violence is really clear. It's forbidden, which means that an article that was recently published in the American press, in which got a major editor in a major publication fired over an op-ed that was published under the title "Send in the Troops," couldn't have been published in France. I couldn't publish that. I would have been legally liable for that. Call to violence or forbidden.